This episode of The Young Turks is brought to you by GoToMeeting, online meetings made easy.
Condoleezza Rice goes on with Lawrence O'Donnell, and to her credit, she does go on. They start talking a little bit about Saddam Hussein and what O'Donnell is trying to pin her down on. This was an interview airing this week. What O'Donnell is trying to pin her down on his show on Msnbc is whether it was a mistake to go after Saddam Hussein and whether he was a threat, and he focuses, rightly so, on whether he was involved with the attacks on September 11th. And she won't let it go and just simply makes up how much of a threat Osama bin Laden was. See, that guy was a threat. Makes up how much of a threat Saddam Hussein is by just saying the word threat. Like there's no level of threat. Lots of things are a threat. Guys on the street with Swiss Army knives are threats, but we don't go to war with them. We don't send in the 82nd Airborne. So anyway, here's the first clip talking about the Bush administration's response after September 11th, Condoleezza Rice and Lawrence O'Donnell.
If one looks at what happened to us on September 11th, we didn't connect the dots. There was a threat materializing that we didn't respond to. Saddam Hussein had been a threat from the time that he invaded Iran in the late 1980s through the 1991, when in fact he went into Kuwait, dragging us into war. We thought he had reconstituted his weapons of mass destruction. And in a context in which terrorism and weapons of mass destruction was a nexus that we could not allow, we decided that this was a threat that had to be dealt with.
That's not what you decided. You were connecting him to September 11th. You kept saying it. And you talked about we don't want the smoking gun to be a mushroom cloud. There were no weapons of mass destruction and the nexus of terrorism. You're just making words up. And if you were really concerned about that, if you hadn't been predisposed to going to war, if you hadn't, as every book has determined, that you had decided to go to war, you would have let the inspectors finish their job. We had determined that he'd reconstituted his weapons program. But you didn't let the inspectors, who couldn't find any weapons, do their job. She's lying. She's, again, I hate to keep making the point, but she's either lying or dense. And I don't think she's dense. So she's lying. Or she's so out of the loop, but the inspectors were there. Why did you pull the inspectors out? They wouldn't have found any weapons. You wouldn't have had a reason to invade. What was the rush? The nexus of terrorism. It's frustrating, man, because then O'Donnell's going to point out here how many people died, and I think his estimates are low, crazy low. Here's the next bite. They get into it a little bit here. Condi and Condoleezza Rice. Shouldn't call her Condi. She's not my friend. She was Secretary of State and National Security Advisor. Condoleezza Rice and Lawrence O'Donnell.
Saddam Hussein was a threat. He had used weapons of mass destruction.
But we now know he wasn't a threat.
This was not... Lawrence, are we going to do this with my answers or with your commentary? We had not focused on the fact, you have not focused on the fact, that Saddam Hussein had been a threat to the United States of America, to the Middle East, since he invaded Iran. Now, we made the wrong call then, and we supported him against Iran. He then became a more monstrous threat. After 1991, shooting at our aircraft in the no-fly zone that was supposed to be keeping his Air Force on the ground, trying to reconstitute his weapons of mass destruction, breaking out of the sanctions through the scandalous oil for food program. Yes, he was a threat. With or without mature weapons of mass destruction, he was a threat. And nothing of value is ever won without sacrifice. Of course, the lives lost will never be brought back. But in Iraq, that is not a threat to invade its neighbors, not a threat to reconstitute its weapons of mass destruction, not a threat to play Palestinian terrorists as suicide bombers. That's going to be a better Iraq and a better Middle East. And so, in fact, I think that what we did in Iraq will be demonstrated by history to be an important part, an important pillar of a new Middle East.
God damn it. So here's what she said. First of all, the question that O'Donnell asked in that case was, is it worth it? 40,000 dead is what he used, and 4,400 American lives lost. And then she gets into nothing of value is ever won without sacrifice, and the lives lost will never be brought back. Thanks. Yeah, we get that nothing of value is ever won without sacrifice, except, by the way, that's not always true. Sometimes there's no sacrifice at all. And in fact, George Bush asked that there not be a sacrifice, asking us to have a tax break, asking us to not asking the American people to make any kind of sacrifice at all except shop. So who he asked to sacrifice was 40,000 Iraqis. A lot of evidence that it's much more than that. Bear in mind, during World War II, 20 million Soviets died. 20 million. 20 million. So the notion that 40,000 Iraqis died seems low. And when you hear the much higher numbers, don't dismiss them. 20 million Russians died in World War II. I got it. They weren't the same. A lot of them died in the cold. I just mean, let's keep that in perspective. The war was longer. So what she is saying is that even without the weapons of mass destruction, which you full well know if the inspectors had been allowed to finish their job, you wouldn't have invaded. She's saying, trying to reconstitute his weapons of mass destruction program, we would have done that even, he was a threat even without that. She says he'd become more monstrous, and that the big mistake was not going after him after the first Gulf War. After 1991, shooting at our aircraft in the no-fly zone that was supposed to be keeping his Air Force on the ground. We went to war with him in 2003 because he shot at our aircraft in 1991? Are you out of your frickin' mind? The scandalous oil for food program? So he stiffed the United Nations in a money scheme? So we invaded his country? Are you out of your mind? How dense are you? This is a travesty. People are dead. American foreign policy is shattered for decades and decades and decades, and it affected our ability to win in Afghanistan and kill Osama bin Laden and get justice for the 3,000 Americans killed on September 11th. And you're talking about the frickin' oil for food program? What is wrong with you? How incompetent were these Bush people?
GoToMeeting.com makes online meetings easy and fast. You can join in by phone or use your computer mic. You can also do presentations online and share your computer so people can see your presentations as you're doing the meeting. And one flat rate gets you as many meetings as you want.
Get a free trial at GoToMeeting.com, click on the Try It Free button, and enter the promo code Turks.